They say land has memory. That soil remembers love, betrayal, and blood. When my mother died, she left me the family vineyard, 100 acres of tangled roots and buried secrets. I thought I inherited peace. What I got was a war, against my sister, the man I loved, and my own past. My name is Isabelle Duval. I'm 38, a quiet-hearted woman born from stubborn roots and slow sunrises. I was raised on the Duval Vineyard in Sonoma Valley, California. My mother used to say that vines grow like people, they reach for the sun, but they're shaped by shadows. And Lord knows, my family had its share of shadows. We weren't poor. But we weren't glamorous either. We were soil and sweat, not silk and champagne. My father passed away when I was 16, leaving Mama to run the vineyard with grit and an old-world sense of justice. My older sister, Vivian, left as soon as she could. I stayed. Maybe because I loved the land. Maybe because I thought staying would mean I mattered. I married a kind man named Elias Monroe, a former environmental engineer who gave up city life to help me run the estate. For a while, we were happy. Long mornings bottling rose in the stone cellar, evenings cooking barefoot with a glass of something rich and red. Elias loved the earth like I did. Or so I believed. But the real story began when Mama died, and her will was read. I remember the sharp scent of rosemary in the room, the tension sticking to the wooden beams overhead. The lawyer's voice was flat. Practiced. Cold. The Duval Vineyard shall be entrusted to Isabelle. Full rights. Full ownership. Vivian's eyes sliced across the room, polished and venomous. That's not possible, she hissed. Mama told me, she said I'd get my share. The lawyer blinked. Your mother revised the will 3 months before her death. It's legally binding. Vivian stared at me like I had stabbed her with a pruning knife. I didn't understand it either. Mama had always spoken of us as a pair, 2 halves of the Duval legacy. I expected to share. I wanted to share. But when I looked at Vivian that day, I saw something unrecognizable in her eyes, an old wound, freshly torn open. She stormed out, heels echoing through the house like gunshots. That was the last time we spoke civilly. At first, I believed it would blow over. That she'd call. That we'd meet for coffee and find our way back. But instead, she went to war. Within a month, I received my first legal notice, a petition to contest the will. She hired a shark of a lawyer out of San Francisco. Said Mama was not of sound mind. Said I manipulated her. Accused me of coercion. I stared at the papers with trembling hands. The vines outside my window swayed gently in the breeze, oblivious to the storm rising. Elias tried to comfort me. Held me close in bed that night, whispered we'd fight this together. That everything would be okay. But things weren't okay. Something had changed in him. He started coming home later. Spending more time in town. Claiming he was meeting with vendors and distributors I'd never heard of. He stopped looking me in the eye. Stopped touching me with warmth. At first I thought it was the stress, until I found the receipts. Hotel receipts. From the Silver Birch Inn. The same place my sister always stayed when she came up from the city. My heart cracked, but I didn't confront him. Not yet. I needed more than suspicion. I needed proof. So I waited. I played the loyal wife. I smiled through clenched teeth and went to court alone while Elias took meetings. I hired my own legal counsel, Marta Farrell, a sharp-tongued environmental lawyer with a steel spine and no tolerance for betrayal. You're not just defending land, she told me. You're defending identity. Bloodlines. Don't give an inch. I didn't. Even as my stomach twisted with anxiety and my dreams turned to ash. Then came the surprise inspection. A team of county regulators arrived at the vineyard without warning, citing complaints of illegal pesticide use. Anonymous tips. Environmental violations. My family had farmed this land organically for generations. It was a lie, a smear campaign. But it meant court delays. Fines. Media attention. And worse, it worked. One of our largest distributors suspended orders. I was being choked from the roots. And all the while, Elias grew colder. Sharper. More distracted. And I grew more suspicious. So I planted a camera in the wine cellar. Just one. Hidden in the beam behind the old oak barrels. It was desperate, it was paranoid, and it was exactly what I needed. What I saw made my blood freeze. Elias and Vivian. Kissing. In my cellar. Their betrayal fermented like sour grapes in my chest. It wasn't just about the land anymore. It was about everything: trust, love, legacy. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I started planning. Because if they thought I was just a country girl in muddy boots, they'd forgotten I was my mother's daughter. And my mother knew how to fight dirty when it came to protecting what mattered. Some people break when betrayed. Others catch fire. The night I saw my husband and sister tangled in betrayal, something in me burned to life. I wasn't just defending a vineyard anymore, I was defending the soul of a legacy. And I swore I would bring both of them to their knees. I didn't sleep that night. The images from the security camera played in my mind like a nightmare loop. Elias's hand on Vivian's hip, her whisper against his throat, the way they kissed like they'd done it 100 times before, like they owned that cellar. Like I didn't exist. But I did exist. And I was done being the quiet one. At sunrise, I walked through the vineyard barefoot. The soil was cool beneath my feet, the air thick with the scent of damp leaves and crushed wild thyme. This land raised me. It healed me when my father died. It held the weight of every family dinner, every harvest celebration, every night Mama and I laughed over spilled wine and stubborn dreams. Vivian didn't just betray me. She desecrated home. And Elias, he didn't just cheat on me. He invaded my sanctuary. I returned to the house with a single thought ringing through me: they want to play dirty? Then I'll show them just how deep these roots go. The first step was simple. I called Marta, my lawyer. "Do you want to destroy them quietly?" she asked, "or make it hurt?" I didn't even hesitate. "Both." She laughed, but her voice sharpened. "Then we're going to need leverage. Legal, financial, emotional. Tell me everything." So I did. I told her about the affair, the surveillance footage, the forged pesticide reports I suspected were filed by Elias under a shell alias. He had the technical knowledge, after all. I even showed her the romantic messages I found saved in the cloud, where Vivian foolishly synced her iPad and forgot to log out. My sister had called me a pathetic gardener in a broken house. Elias had said, "Don't worry, love. Once we win the vineyard, we'll rip up the old vines and build something new." Build what, exactly? They wanted to turn my family estate into a luxury wellness retreat. Sell off the vines. Replace the cellar with spas and glass-walled yoga studios. Call it the Duval experience. My mother would have died all over again if she'd heard that. The second step was harder, because it meant lying. To Elias. He came home 2 days later, pretending nothing had happened. Kissed my cheek like he hadn't licked wine off my sister's lips in the cellar. I played the game. Wore the old perfume he liked. Made pasta from scratch. Let him talk about distributors and expansion like we were still partners. "You're glowing," he said, brushing a hand down my spine. "I've just been thinking," I replied. "About our future." He smiled. Thought he had one. Thought I was still the woman who waited quietly while he networked with other women. But I wasn't waiting anymore. I was calculating. Marta filed for a restraining order against Vivian entering the vineyard under hostile action against a private property in legal dispute. She looped in a forensic accountant to review Elias's recent purchases, specifically a $47,000 business development expense tied to a dummy company registered in Vivian's name. We froze joint accounts. Quietly. We sent subpoenas to the county environmental agency. And we hired Rachel Mallon, a fiery local journalist from the Sonoma Ledger who had a habit of exposing land fraud, nepotism, and corrupt development deals. She came for wine. Stayed for the scandal. "If you're okay going public," Rachel said, voice low, "I'll run the story." Sisters' betrayal. Corporate greed. The death of old California vineyards. People will eat it up. I said yes. But I wasn't prepared for what came next. Because Vivian struck back. 3 days after the article ran, someone set fire to our old tractor shed. It was late. I was walking the property with a flashlight, unable to sleep. I saw the flicker first. Then the smoke. Then the blaze. It lit up the vineyard like a funeral pyre. I screamed. Called 911. The fire department arrived within 15 minutes, but the shed was already gutted. Inside were charred barrels, ruined tools, and the old ledger books from my mother's early harvest years, handwritten, irreplaceable. Gone. The police called it likely arson. I called it Vivian. She showed up the next day, looking heartbroken in a designer coat and crocodile tears. "I'm so sorry about the fire," she said, clutching my hands. "This wasn't what I wanted. I stared at her, silent. Maybe we could come to an agreement, she whispered. Sell the land. Divide the profit. Start fresh. You mean give you half, then watch you pave over everything Mama built? I said, my voice shaking. You kissed your way into betrayal, Vivian. But I'm not for sale. She dropped the act. You always thought this land loved you more. But you were just the caretaker. I was always the heir. I leaned in close. Then why did Mama leave it all to me? That silenced her. She left with her mask shattered, rage boiling just under her painted face. But I knew the war wasn't over. The fire was only the beginning. Next would come the public smear, the legal traps, and the emotional ambushes. So I fortified myself. I called a town hall meeting. Invited neighbors, vintners, friends of the family. I told them the truth, about the threats to our vineyard, about the lawsuit, about the attack on our legacy. People listened. They rallied. Farmers offered legal testimonies. An old retired botanist named Harold pledged his support and said, "Your mama helped save my vines in the drought of '98. I owe her." I stood on the steps of the old barn, facing a crowd of familiar, dirt-worn faces. They want to gut this place for profit, I said. But we're more than dirt and grapes. We're a community. And I'll fight for every damn leaf on these vines if I have to. The cheers echoed across the fields. That night, I walked the rows alone, the moonlight silvering the leaves. And I whispered, "This is for you, Mama." Because she hadn't just left me land. She'd left me roots. And from those roots, I would rise. Every family keeps secrets. Ours were buried in the cellar, beneath barrels of aged wine, dust-covered books, and the silence my mother took to her grave. I thought the betrayal was about land. But it was about blood. And when I opened that trapdoor, I discovered what my mother never wanted me to find. The fire left more than ash behind, it left questions. The insurance adjuster said the cause was likely intentional, though difficult to prove. I knew what that meant. No payout. No justice. Just loss. But loss had become a language I understood all too well. While the vineyard staff helped clear the charred debris, I locked myself in the study and combed through every record I could find. I wanted to understand why. Why would Mama change the will so drastically? Why leave everything to me? We were raised together. Side by side. Sure, Vivian was always more ambitious, more elegant. But we were still sisters. Until we weren't. Marta suspected something deeper. Something that would explain why Vivian was so sure the vineyard should have been hers. Check the family trust, she told me. Something doesn't add up. I did. And what I found sent a cold shiver down my spine. The trust had a rider added just 4 months before Mama died. A clause about non-biological heirs. Vivian wasn't excluded, she had been disqualified. My hands shook as I reread the legal language. It was clear, unflinching. The vineyard was to go only to the biological child of Lucille Duval. That couldn't be right, could it? I rushed to Mama's old bedroom. Tore through drawers, jewelry boxes, old photo albums. Nothing explained it. But then I remembered something, a small, rusted key Mama always kept in her apron pocket. She called it the cellar's spine. I had seen it only once. When I was 8. She had been crying, clutching it like it was the only thing holding her together. I found the key buried at the bottom of her sewing kit. Still warm from memory. The next morning, I took it to the back wall of the wine cellar, behind the old oak barrels that hadn't been moved in years. The stone there was different. Cracked. I tapped until I found the hollow sound, and slid the key into a hidden latch beneath the lowest shelf. The wall opened with a reluctant groan. Behind it, a door. Not a wine rack. Not a storage nook. An actual door, iron-hinged and worn with age. And beyond that door, a room. Dust blanketed everything. The air was thick with forgotten time. Old file cabinets. A cot. A rusting safe. And on the table, a single brown envelope with my name written in Mama's looping cursive. To Isabel, when you're ready to know. My heart pounded as I slid the letter out. The words inside broke and rebuilt me in the same breath. My dearest Isabel, if you're reading this, then the cellar has revealed its truth. And so must I. Vivian is not your full sister. She's not your father's child. She was born from a brief affair I had after your father passed. I raised her as his, as ours. Because I was scared. Scared of what people would say, scared of raising 2 girls alone. But most of all, I was ashamed. Vivian was never meant to know. I hoped that by loving her equally, it would never matter. But as the years passed, I saw the way she looked at the vineyard, not with reverence, but ambition. I saw her hunger. Her entitlement. And when she asked me about selling, when she said she'd turn this dusty estate into something worthy of our name, I knew I couldn't give it to her. Because this vineyard isn't just land. It's memory. It's roots. It's your father's sweat. Your grandfather's hands. And it's yours, my sweet girl. You are the last true Duval. And this land, it answers to you. My tears stained the paper. I sat there, in that cold, secret room, as the truth reshaped my life. Vivian wasn't just my rival. She was the outsider. Everything made sense now, her obsession, her fury, her desperation. She had believed, all her life, that she was the heir. That this land was hers by right. But Mama had made her choice. And now I had to protect it. I took the letter straight to Marta. She read it in silence. "This changes everything," she said. "Not just emotionally. Legally." We filed the letter. Filed the updated trust. Submitted DNA verification from Mama's stored medical samples. It was painful. Brutal. But necessary. Vivian's case was now legally hopeless. But she didn't know that yet. And neither did Elias. That night, Elias came home with champagne. Said the pesticide claims were dropped. Said one of our old distributors wanted to reconsider. He kissed me on the cheek and held me close like a man who thought the war was over. "Feels like we're winning," he murmured. "Oh, Elias," I said softly. "You have no idea." Later, while he showered, I pulled up the security footage again. Not the kiss this time. The conversation after it. Vivian had said, "Once the vineyard's ours, we sell to Atrium Group. Quick and clean. 30 million, split down the middle. Isabel can keep her lavender soaps." Atrium Group. A soulless real estate development company known for swallowing heritage sites and replacing them with luxury condos and fake charm. I didn't just feel rage. I felt clarity. They didn't just want to steal from me, they wanted to erase us. I went to the wine library that night. Pulled out the bottle Mama had labeled Solstice 92, for the end of something. I poured myself a glass. I made a list. At the top, Vivian. Elias. Atrium Group. And just beneath that, burn nothing. Expose everything. Because revenge wasn't about fire. It was about truth. And now I had it. Revenge doesn't always come with screaming matches or broken glass. Sometimes, it comes in silence, ink on paper, whispers in courtrooms, and the subtle destruction of someone's illusion of power. But just when I thought I was winning, a forgotten envelope shattered my certainty and revealed a truth even I wasn't ready for. I never thought I'd find satisfaction in a conference room full of lawyers. But when I walked into the county courthouse that morning, heels echoing down the marble floors, I felt it, not arrogance, not pride, just power. My power. A woman stripped of everything, now dressed in full armor, with truth as her sword. Elias was already seated at the long, polished table. His tie was loose, and his jaw twitched. He hadn't shaved. I liked that. It suited him, like a man halfway to ruin. Vivian wasn't there. Just as expected. She had stopped showing up to her own depositions. Marta said it was a stall tactic. I knew better. Vivian was unraveling, and nothing terrified her more than being seen without control. The judge called us in. I handed over the envelope, the original letter from Mama, notarized and authenticated. Alongside it, Marta submitted documentation proving the trust clause. DNA verification. Property logs signed in my name. And a new piece of evidence that took even me by surprise. Elias had transferred $1.2 million from our joint business account into a private holding company 2 weeks after Mama's death. Under the name V&M Estates. Vivian and Monroe. They hadn't just planned to take my vineyard. They had already started laundering it. When the documents were laid out on the table, Elias's face went gray. "Care to explain these transactions?" the opposing counsel asked, sliding the paperwork toward him. Elias fumbled. Sweated. Stammered something about investment projections. The judge raised an eyebrow. "And the Monroe Wellness Vineyard branding proposal submitted to Atrium Group? What does that have to do with Duval Vineyards?" Silence. Dead, choking silence. And then Elias said something I didn't expect. He turned to me, eyes glassy, voice trembling. You don't understand, Isabel. I didn't mean to hurt you. I thought you didn't want this place anymore. You looked so tired. So lonely. I blinked, stunned. Not by his words, but by the fact that he believed them. He wasn't just greedy. He had convinced himself I would be grateful to be freed from the very soil that kept me alive. You betrayed me, I said, my voice even. You betrayed her memory. And you did it not because you had to, but because you thought I wouldn't fight back. He opened his mouth. Closed it. And for once, Elias Monroe had nothing to say. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. Word had spread about the case. Duval versus Monroe. Sister. Husband. Vineyard. A journalist's dream. Rachel Mallon, the woman who'd first published my story, handed me a microphone. Isabel, is it true you plan to press criminal charges? I plan to protect my land, I said. Whatever that takes. The article that ran the next morning was brutal. How greed tried to swallow a legacy, the woman who outsmarted her family. It went viral. Within 48 hours, Atrium Group withdrew their interest. Distributors sent apology emails. Clients who had paused orders came back. One of them wrote, "We stand with the Duvals. The real ones." The tides were turning. And then came the letter. Delivered by courier. No return address. Handwritten. The paper was old, edges yellowed. I opened it slowly. The signature at the bottom made my stomach twist. From Lucille Duval. To Vivian Duval. Dated 7 years ago. My darling Vivian, if you ever find this letter, it means I've done what I feared most, left the world without telling you the truth. You are not your father's child. I know this will hurt. But I loved you with everything I had. I never told you because I feared losing your love. But perhaps that silence was its own betrayal. I see the fire in you, the ambition. You are capable of great things, Vivian, but only if you do not let resentment poison you. You are a Duval in heart, if not in blood. You were never less in my eyes. But the vineyard, it belongs to Isabel. Not because you are less worthy, but because she remembers what this land means. I love you. I always did. Mama, I didn't sleep that night. Not because of guilt. But because of understanding. Vivian wasn't just fighting for the vineyard. She was fighting to matter. She was fighting not to be the secret Mama never admitted while alive. I thought I'd hate her more after that. Instead, I pitied her. But pity doesn't equal forgiveness. The next morning, I received an official notification. Vivian had filed a counter-motion, claiming emotional duress, seeking partial rights to the estate based on lifelong contribution. The claws were out again. Only this time, mine were sharper. I called Marta. Let's go nuclear, I said. She didn't ask questions. We filed charges for fraud, embezzlement, property tampering, and violation of environmental law against Elias. We requested full restraining orders against both of them. We prepared for trial. And while the legal world swirled like a storm around me, I stood in the center of my vineyard, hands dirty with earth, heart heavy with truth. The battle wasn't over. But I had the land. I had the people. I had the story. And soon, I would have justice. They didn't want justice. They wanted to watch me break. But I had already survived the worst kind of betrayal, love turned into poison. The courtroom wasn't just where we settled disputes. It was where I bled. Where I bared the truth. And where I reminded them what legacy truly costs. The first morning of the trial felt like harvest day, tense, electric, ripe with the weight of everything that had come before. The courtroom was small, claustrophobic. Wood-paneled walls. Fluorescent lights too bright. On the right side of the aisle sat Vivian, expression sharp as glass. On the left, Elias, unshaven, jaw clenched, a man who now lived under the constant threat of criminal indictment. And me? I wore Mama's silver locket. A navy suit. And the same steel inside me that carried generations of Duvals through drought, fire, and heartbreak. Marta stood beside me, calm and calculating. The judge entered. Gavels struck. And the war began. Vivian's counsel opened with drama. My client devoted her life to the Duval estate. She was raised on that land. Worked it. Loved it. And now, due to an outdated clause based on blood and not effort, she is left with nothing. I bit the inside of my cheek. Vivian sat perfectly still. Regal. A picture of grace and quiet devastation. Then she took the stand. And started lying. I was 10 when Mama taught me how to prune. Isabel hated the vines. She said they smelled like mildew and made her clothes dirty. A snort escaped from someone behind me, Harold, the retired botanist. The judge raised an eyebrow. Marta stood. We'll allow this as background, the judge said. But keep it relevant. Vivian's lawyer nodded. Of course. Then Vivian dropped her bomb. I wasn't just Isabel's sister. I was her caretaker. I drove Mama to the hospital appointments Isabel skipped. I handled the business accounts while Isabel doodled vineyard logos like it was arts and crafts hour. That was when Marta leaned in and whispered, "She's going for character assassination." "Let her," I whispered back. I brought the receipts. And I had. Literal ones. The next witness was our side, the vineyard's accountant. She confirmed Vivian had never once touched the books. That I had handled every report, tax file, and export license since I was 22. Marta cross-examined Vivian with the grace of a scalpel. "Vivian, can you tell the court what the difference is between a Mourvedre and a Malbec grape?" Vivian blinked. "They're red?" Marta smiled. "Thank you. No further questions." Elias's testimony was worse. He tried to present himself as a victim. Claimed Vivian seduced him. That I had emotionally abandoned him. That the vineyard had become an obsession. But the court didn't care about broken vows. They cared about the forged documents Elias signed to divert funds. They cared about the pesticide smear campaign he orchestrated using a ghost consultant with no credentials. They cared about the Atrium Group emails we subpoenaed, ones that showed Elias offering an expedited buyout with no estate complications weeks before the will had even been read. Elias cracked under pressure. "She was never supposed to fight this hard," he finally shouted. "She was supposed to just let go." The silence that followed was the kind of silence that breaks men. But just as we began to close the case, the courtroom door opened. And he walked in. Tall. Weathered. Eyes dark like winter soil. Raymond Duval. My father's half-brother. We hadn't seen him in nearly 20 years. Vivian turned pale. Her jaw dropped. I hadn't invited him. Hadn't even thought of him. But there he was, summoned by fate, or something stranger. He walked straight to the judge and submitted a letter of witness. The judge reviewed it in silence. Then nodded. "We'll allow him to speak." Raymond took the stand, cleared his throat, and began with a voice like dry oak. "I came because of the girl my brother left behind. The one who stayed. The one who planted her hands in the soil and stayed. That's Isabel. And as for the other one," he looked straight at Vivian, "Lucille wrote me once. Said she feared what ambition would do to the girl who never asked questions, only took." Vivian stood up. "This is a circus," she hissed. The judge banged the gavel. "Sit down or be removed." She sat. Barely. Raymond continued. "My brother loved that land. And I know what Lucille meant when she said only Isabel understood it. It wasn't just about grapes. It was about roots. Family. Sacrifice. Isabel made that land live." I swallowed hard. And in that moment, I didn't feel like a plaintiff. I felt like the last keeper of a promise. Closing statements were brief. Vivian's side argued emotional trauma. Elias's lawyer begged for leniency pending criminal proceedings. Marta simply stood, looked at the judge, and said, "Legacy is not something you take. It's something you earn." Then we waited. 3 days. 3 long, quiet days. On the morning of the 4th, I stood in the vineyard watching the fog rise from the rose when Marta called. We won. My legs nearly gave out. I dropped to my knees in the soil and wept, not out of triumph, but relief. The judgment was clear, full estate ownership to me, as per the will. Criminal charges against Elias for fraud and environmental violations. A permanent injunction barring Vivian from any business or legal claim to the Duval vineyard. I didn't throw a party. I didn't gloat. Instead, I reopened the old cellar and placed Mama's letter on the mantel. Lit a candle beside it. And whispered, I kept it safe. But the story doesn't end there. Because 1 week later, I received an envelope. No name. No return address. Inside, a single photo. Vivian. Sitting on the hood of a car. A baby in her arms. And on the back, in handwriting I didn't recognize, the blood may not be yours, Isabel. But the child is. See you soon. Some secrets don't destroy you. They set you free. I thought the vineyard was my inheritance. But it was never just land, it was history, and pain, and hope. And now, standing on the edge of everything I thought I knew, I'm faced with a choice: protect the past, or rewrite the future. The photograph haunted me. Vivian. A baby. A car I didn't recognize, parked in some sun-bleached field. She looked different. Not angry. Not bitter. Just tired. And that baby, wrapped in a quilt that looked handmade, wearing a onesie with a tiny embroidered grape cluster on it. Mama's design. I flipped the photo over again. The blood may not be yours, Isabel. But the child is. See you soon. My heart beat like footsteps on hollow wood. What did it mean? Whose child? Mine? No. Impossible. Unless. I drove to the edge of the vineyard where the Duval land met the cliffs. The sea below crashed like thunder, but my mind was louder. For years, I thought I knew every scar this family carried. But now, a new one pulsed in my chest, and it wasn't rage. It was uncertainty. The next morning, I got the call. Vivian's number. I let it go to voicemail. Then another call. From Marta. Vivian filed a temporary guardianship request. It was dismissed, but... Isabel, the child exists. Who is he? His name is Lucian. He's 2. And Marta paused. She's naming you as emergency guardian if anything happens to her. I went still. You need to meet with her, Marta said. Not as her rival. As her sister. We met at the edge of the vineyard, near the old fig tree where we used to sit as girls, carving initials into the bark. Vivian looked older. Not in years, but in weight. Her once impeccable makeup was gone. Her eyes were tired. She held a toddler in her arms, olive skin, dark curls, eyes that looked just like my father's. I froze. And she smiled. Soft. Unsteady. His name is Lucian, she said. Short for Lucille's son. I couldn't speak. She knelt, letting him toddle forward. He's yours? I asked. Vivian shook her head. No. He's ours. What does that mean? She looked up, the sun cutting across her face in fractured light. After Mama died. I spiraled. You know that. I was angry. At her. At you. At the world. I didn't think I mattered. So I ran. She took a long breath. I found someone. Briefly. A vineyard worker. His name was Noah. He left when I told him I was pregnant. I didn't want you to know. Not because I was ashamed. But because I knew he wouldn't be safe with me. Not the way I was then. So why now? Vivian looked me dead in the eyes. Because I have stage 3 lymphoma. The words hit like frost. I start treatment next week, she said. He'll need stability. Family. And whether I like it or not, Isabel, you're the only one who knows what this land means. My throat tightened. You tried to burn it all down, I whispered. She nodded. And now I'm asking you to save what's left. We sat in silence. The little boy played with a fig leaf, chasing a ladybug. And I saw it. Not just Vivian's brokenness. But my own healing. Because this wasn't just revenge anymore. This was rebirth. Over the next months, we drafted the papers. Guardianship. Legacy trust. Lucian's name added to the deed, not for now, but for the future. Marta oversaw it all, her voice gentle but firm. Vivian began treatment. Some days were good. Others weren't. But she smiled more. She came by the vineyard. Sometimes we talked. Sometimes we didn't. And I got to know Lucian. The way he laughed when he saw the irrigation canals. The way he reached for the old grape press. The way he said Zabel instead of Isabel. He didn't know the story. Not yet. But one day, he would. And when that day came, I'd tell him the truth, that his mother was both my enemy and my blood. That this land nearly broke us both. And that love, real love, means staying even when you want to run. On the last day of harvest, I stood at the edge of the field with Lucian in my arms, the vines behind us thick with fruit, the sun melting into the hills like honey. The workers clapped. The barrels were full. The soil was strong. And for the first time in my life, I felt free. Not because the past was gone, but because I had finally chosen to live beyond it.